What is up, everybody? My name is Sammy Darn. If you guys are brand new here, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below. And make sure you guys share and subscribe and all that fun, good stuff. And make sure you tell everybody about my channel. And make sure you hit that like and subscribe and comments and leave all that fun comments. And make sure you tell me what other videos I should react to and um, all that fun stuff like story time or all that other fun stuff. So let's get this video roll. Let's go. I'm going to do 5 real New Year's horror stories. Let's get this video roll. Let's go.
You can wish me a happy new year by helping me get this video to 2,000 likes. Oh, and subscribe and click the notification bell too. Thank you. And of course, Happy New Year. 2019 is coming up way too fast. It's time to leave all your troubles from previous years behind and move on. Turn over a new leaf, as they say. But some things, no matter how hard you try to forget, seem to haunt you forever. These are 5 allegedly real New Year's horror stories. No amount of New Year's resolution can fix these nightmares. If you want your story to appear in an episode of Darkness Prevails, share it with us at darknessprevails.org. Also, favorite and follow my podcast at dppodcast.com. What was in that house? From TJS Terror. Location unknown. This happened at the start of January of 2018. I was in 6th grade, 11 years old. I was your pretty average kid. Passed through school with a few A's and mostly B's, and I had a few friends. One of which was my best friend, Colin. Colin lived about half an hour away from me, so I didn't go to his house too often. When I did go to his house, we would always play in his woods. He had a good 3 acres of just forest and trees and creeks. There was also a good-sized pond that we would go fishing in during the summer months. However, there was an abandoned house by the end of his property. It was a normal house, 2 floors. It had been abandoned in the 1960s, according to Colin. Since the 1970s, teenagers had been partying in it and had trashed it. Colin's eldest sister, Anna, who was 26 at the time of writing, used to party in it herself as well, but she stopped some time before Colin was born, for reasons she would not say. The one time we told her that we were going there, she freaked out on us, cautioning us to stay away from that place at all costs and to never go inside, especially not to the basement. We simply thought she was talking about substances or alcohol or something, but we were wrong, terribly wrong. I had taken the bus over to Colin's house on Friday, and I stayed the night, with plans to explore the abandoned house the next morning. When we woke up, we put our orange vests and paintball masks on, so that we would be easy to find. We took a gator, that kind of pickup truck ATV thing you see at farms, to the end of the trail that eventually became paved part of the way. "Hey Colin," I asked. "Yeah." "Did you ever pave this trail?" "Nah man, not us." "Huh," I said. Then I immediately yelled, "Stop the gator!" Colin slammed on the brakes suddenly and asked what the heck was wrong. I was staring off into one part of the snow-covered forest. There appeared to be the remnants of a foundation of a house just in the middle of the woods. All that remained of the house was part of the stairs. I thought it was both eerie and a bit mesmerizing to see nothing but a set of stairs in the middle of the forest. Trees in place where the house should have been, but not even the foundation itself remained, save for a vague rectangular outline. But the wilderness had reclaimed that spot, again all except for the stairs. I thought they were really cool, but Colin made it very clear that we should just keep going. He may have been tired, but I think he was getting creeped out by it. We kept on going, and I started to notice how the further we went on this trail, the more frequent the trees around us appeared to be decaying. It may have been winter and snowing out, but these trees were very visibly rotting. I pointed this out to Colin, but he again just shrugged it off. We got to the house. The trees cleared to the small yard. We got off the gator and Colin grabbed a rifle from the bed of the gator. We went to the door and Colin shut off the knob. I jumped. "What the heck, dude?" "Ladies first," he said. I guess it was nice of him to try to lighten the mood, but I was starting to regret coming out here. As we entered the abandoned place, I heard a loud crash in the basement. Both of us nearly soiled ourselves. "What was that?" I said. I was so scared and startled, I thought I was going to throw up. We continued inside with bravery I didn't know I had, or perhaps it was stupidity. I don't know. Colin aimed the rifle around. Wary of the basement, we decided to explore upstairs first. We didn't find much, as everything had been trashed over the years from multiple parties. Something I forgot to mention was that these parties suddenly stopped one night in 2002. Again, for a purpose that I was not told, but that I wish I knew. There were so many mysteries in that dang house, and I was so glad to finally be there, even if I was scared out of my mind. But I was also trying to figure out what possibly could have made that noise. We finished upstairs and went to the main floor. Once again, we found nothing. But as we made our way to the back door, we found bits of deer, fresh bits, legs, innards. We found the trail of viscera and followed it to the basement door, and it led down to sheer darkness. We looked at each other. "We should definitely not go down there," I said, but was cut off by Colin. "TJ, be quiet." His eyes were wider than I'd ever seen them, so wide I thought the skin would tear from his temples. Colin pointed toward the basement, and I saw it. 2 yellow eyes the size of grapefruits. We didn't sit there waiting around to see what it was, and instead screamed. The eyes began to approach us, but I turned ready to run and telling Colin to fire at it, but Colin had already turned to run as well. We dashed to the door, which we had closed as we stepped inside, but now it was jammed, the old broken thing. I fiddled with it desperately, as the thing that was pursuing us took what Colin would later call an impossibly long step towards us. I didn't see what was happening behind us, but Colin said that the thing was leaning over us, ready to grab at us. I swear to God, I felt breathing, and my heart sank. "TJ, move!" A mere second after I took my hands off the doorknob, Colin blew another hole through it, which, now that I think of it, was probably why it got jammed in the first place. This time, it released its hold, and the door blew open. We ran to the gator, and Colin floored it. We almost crashed when we heard a loud shrieking coming from behind us back at the house, but we didn't stop, and we didn't turn around. We kept going until we made it back to Colin's place. There, we called the police, and since I knew they wouldn't come if we said there was some monster in that house, we said that there was some dangerous homeless person there. Colin's parents weren't home at the time, and his siblings were off doing things, so it was just me and him. The cops came after what seemed like an entire hour, obviously not putting much urgency into our case. We told them that it, or he, was in the basement of that abandoned house. They came back again after 45 minutes. They were radioing for a coroner and a forensics unit. At least that's what I think I heard, from watching and hearing from inside the house. We would only later learn what they found in that basement. And by the time they got there, as these stories usually go, the creature was long gone. But they did find the viscera, except there was more than just deer parts down there. Through DNA testing, they found that some of the bones and remains were from people, a few different people. The saddest part was when they told us about the remains of some small bones that they thought were animal bones, but turned out to be a missing child who had perished when he was less than a year old. But the story isn't over yet. What made me want to write this story was something that happened to me a few weeks back. Colin texted me at about 7 p.m. sounding panicked. I asked what was wrong, and he sent me the following, copied and pasted from the actual text. Anna told me what happened in that house. In 1998, she was at a party at the house, and everyone was drunk except her. She said he went down to the basement, probably passed out, but he never came back out. His parents filed a missing person report, and no one knows where he was until New Year's Eve of '99. When Anna arrives at the New Year's party to find cops examining the boy's body, she got a quick glimpse of it, and she had never seen anything like it. Nothing so screwed up in all her life. Anna stopped going to the parties from then on. She got so mad at me, bro, for going back to that house. This creeped me out beyond belief, and when I think about it, it causes me to lose sleep. I mean, wouldn't you feel the same? Especially when you realize that you could have ended up as one of those bodies in the basement, and God knows how long it would have taken for the cops to discover your remains.
Wow.
Creepy New Year's experience from Gamer27. Location unknown. When I was 23, I had just graduated college, and I was single at the time. So mostly I just spent my time at home watching TV or relaxing. On this particular New Year's Eve, I decided to go to 7-Eleven to purchase some soda and snacks for an upcoming New Year's special on TV. So I got what I needed, and I went to the counter to pay for my items, when a group of Hispanic teenagers came inside and began looking around the store, albeit suspiciously. I thought nothing of it and walked to my car in no rush, when I saw them pointing and laughing at me. I heard words like ho and nerd. I sped up my walking pace and got inside my car. I drove away quickly and thought that was it. It was just some rude people. I went home just fine and began to watch the New Year's special. At about 2 a.m., now 2 hours after New Year's, I decided to call it a night. I woke up at about 4 to noises in my front yard. I think I could hear the sound of people flicking open lighters. Being lazy and tired, I didn't want to get up to check what the commotion was, so I simply thought, did I lock the door? And tried to go back to sleep. The next morning when I woke up, I was curious as to what was happening, so I checked my security footage from the front yard, as I had one of those Nest cams. Again, the previous night I was too lazy and tired to check the app. It was those guys from the gas station. They were smoking or whatever in my yard. But what really scared me was when I realized that I never locked the door. I knew this as I watched the security footage, because I saw these strangers walk in and out of my house, and one of them even came into my room. I don't know what they did in my room, or what they may have done to me, because I don't have any cameras in my room, only in the hallways and the outside. After 5 painful minutes of watching this, The far from sober strangers exited my house, doing God knows what. They had followed me home from 7-Eleven. They had walked right inside while I slept, and I may never know what they did to me while I was sleeping. A couple of months later, they were on the news because they were caught trying to rob an old woman with a loaded weapon. So obviously, they were very much capable of some very bad things. Whenever I think of this story, I get the most sickening feeling in my stomach. New Year's Kiss from Devilishly Handsome. Location, Oregon.
What?
I guess I've always been a weird guy. It was New Year's Eve 2016. Most kids at my school had planned to go to a party at some popular kid's house. His parents were out of town celebrating. I wasn't a normal high schooler, though, looking to get drunk like that. I wanted a good thrill to start off the new year, as part of a larger New Year's resolution I'd made to start doing things that pushed me to my limit. More danger, more excitement, more daring. I guess this was my rebellious stage of sorts. There was only one place I knew of that could provide the kind of adrenaline I was looking for. At the edge of my town, a mid-sized city in Oregon, there is an old abandoned meatpacking plant for pork, I think it was. It hasn't been in use for over 50 years, and though you would expect it to be a hotspot for urban explorers or teens wanting to hang out, for some reason people seem to make an effort to avoid the plant. The few people who would dare to enter refused to say much about their experiences there, normally deflecting and changing the subject entirely. But me, being the lunatic I was, I saw it as the perfect New Year's destination. I would even go alone, just to make it that more surreal. I left in my old green sedan at about 10:30 p.m., and it took about half an hour to get to the other side of town from my house. The street lights started going far and few between, with only an occasional house on the old farm road leading to it. I could see the silhouette of a towering dark red brick building on the horizon, and yet I felt oddly calm driving up to it. No fear at all. Pretty soon, I turned off on the gravelly road through the trees that led to the plant, confidence growing as I got closer. But the serenity I had been enjoying disappeared the moment my headlights hit the entrance. Open. The double doors were wide open at the front, and my heart immediately started racing, looking into the dark abyss ahead of me. I grinned through the fear, though, thinking to myself, good, even scarier. I parked parallel to the front steps, then turned off my car. I slowly got out, trying to be brave, but my legs were shaking with each cautious step. Enough with this suspense, I thought. I decided to just close my eyes and run up the steps until I was inside. So I did. And yes, I tripped. I fell right into the entrance and slowly opened my eyes once again. I looked in shock at what I saw around me. I had assumed the building was tall because it housed multiple stories, but there was only the ground floor, with a huge atrium, moonlight pouring in from narrow windows that seemed to reach up 100 feet in the air. There was almost no equipment left on the floor, just plain hard concrete, layered in dust. Surprisingly, there wasn't any graffiti on the inside. I couldn't even see the opposite end of the structure. The building just seemed to go on forever. I got myself up and began walking, looking up in awe of the 19th century style plant, and I could almost feel the presence of workers from days gone by with each step. It was bizarre, all right, like I was actually walking back through time. I was just starting to see the brick wall at the end of the building when I instinctively thought to look behind me, and as my head turned, I nearly yelled in horror. I was about halfway through, but I could see that those double doors at the entrance had now been shut, and I sure as heck hadn't closed them myself. Before I could even come up with an explanation, I heard a young woman's voice. It was as if she had been watching me. The voice said, "Over here, silly." I jumped about 3 feet in the air. A figure walked out from the shadows into the moonlight from a window. There, standing to my right, was a girl dressed in what appeared to be a dark robe. I couldn't see her face or any of her features because a hood covered her head. She slowly strode towards me before saying in a softer tone, "Sorry, I scared you." The strange girl got within touching distance before pulling back her hood. She was, well, gorgeous, actually. She had long, flowing jet black hair with grayish blue eyes that seemed to glow in the surrounding darkness. She had nearly paper white skin, but with dark lips that curled up in a smile. Her robe totally covered her hands and feet, which struck me as unusual. "What brings you here, stranger?" she said in an almost sing-song voice. Just hanging around, you know." I stammered like a scared idiot. "Why would you hang around here on New Year's Eve?" she chimed while tilting her head like a curious child. "It's cold and often lonely in here." I was slowly starting to grow more comfortable with my new friend. I answered, "Just looking for adventure. Something a little different to start the year off with." Her smile grew even bigger, and now her teeth showed, porcelain white like her skin. "Would you like someone a little different to start the year off with?" I nearly fainted. Girls never paid attention to me before. "Sure," I said. We walked to the far wall together, without a word being spoken. I caught her glance a couple of times on the way there, the brightness of her eyes giving way to a big smile each time. I'd forgotten about her robe. When we got there, we leaned against the wall and started talking. We talked about everything. Our families, our hobbies, our favorite foods. I found out that her name was Joan, and she came from a family of 9 siblings, where she was the youngest. She liked singing and painting.
Sorry about that.
I asked her why she had come to the plant tonight, considering how scared most people were of it. "I've always loved this old building," she said. "I haven't left here since..." I must have looked very confused at this point. She changed the subject quickly. "So what time is it?" she asked. "Well, great timing. It's exactly midnight," I said, looking down at my phone. "Happy New Year." She gave me a wide smile. "You know, I was hoping to have a New Year's kiss with a cute guy, but I guess you'll have to do," she said playfully. Once again, I nearly fainted. Girls never talked like that to me, never wanted to touch, let alone kiss me. Sounds nice," I said. Now I was as nervous as I was walking into the plant, but in a good way this time. She said, "Close your eyes." I did, and she pulled me in close, grabbing my right hand with her left. I was leaning in, just about to kiss her, when I noticed something was off. I grasped her hand even harder in disbelief at what I was feeling. She tried to pull herself away when I brought her hand up to my eyes. "Stop it! Now!" she screamed. It was still fully enveloped in the robe, but I pulled back the sleeve before she could yank her hand back in. I stood there, mouth agape, tears beginning to stream down my face. I was too scared to even make a sound. There, in my now shivering hand, was hers. It had no skin, nails, or muscle, though. Just a bony, skeletal hand. White as her skin, white as her teeth. I dropped it, and it fell back to her side. She quickly tried to hide it behind her back. She mumbled quietly and desperately, "Please don't." But I was already running at full speed toward the entrance. I ran through the building, each of my steps gaining distance away from her, or so I thought. I began to panic, tears blurring my view of the doors. which were somehow open once again. I could hear her footsteps just behind me. No matter how fast I ran, there she was.
What the?
I could feel breathing on the back of my neck. I tried zigzagging, but it was no use. All the way, I heard her voice, repeated shouts of, "Please, stop, don't go." I bolted straight through the entrance, down the steps, and leaped towards my car. I scrambled through the passenger door, not bothering to close it, and crawled into the driver's seat, about to have a heart attack. I took one last look at the building, and I saw a dark-robed figure standing in the door. Its head hung low, and she seemed to be crying. Between sobs, I heard a painful, "Please, come back." I started the car and threw it into gear. I must have gone 100 miles an hour down the gravel driveway back onto the farm road as a plume of dust trailed the car. I zoomed back into town at lightning speed. I glanced at my car's clock, which read 4 a.m. How could this be? Just minutes ago inside the plant, my phone read midnight, the beginning of New Year's Day. When I made it home, I pulled crookedly into my driveway before running inside, bursting into my room. Then I locked all the doors and I closed the blinds. I didn't sleep for what seemed like a week. I had nightmares about the event for about a month. So much for my New Year's resolution. It's been nearly 2 years since then, but my encounter has not left my mind for one day, not since it happened. I find myself thinking about the strange pale girl nearly all the time. This New Year's Eve, I'm going back to the meatpacking plant because I think I love her.
Hi, Susan. Honey, I respect that, but that cough looks pretty bad.
New Year Terror from Silverwolf 69. Location unknown. Despite being a glutton for paranormal encounters, I always say I would avoid it if I could help it. 2015 was a year when I really wish I could have helped it. I could have left that year without having one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. I have a friend named Alexander, who's a fan of the RPG Dungeons & Dragons. He is convinced that the game has actual supernatural or paranormal origins. My female friend Grace and I told him multiple times that that's just crazy. But he kept insisting that playing the game would release something. I heard crazy stories about people taking it too seriously, and he was the wizard, so I had a feeling that if he believed it, I would get dragged into it somehow. I was basically his sidekick after all. Like it would be up to me to solve his matters or problems. He called me on December 31st at about 11 p.m. and told me that he was really scared. Being half asleep, I asked, "What are you scared of?" He told me that he was fully convinced that he had accidentally summoned a succubus. Obviously, I was not believing him for a second. He usually had sudden flights of fancy just to get attention. I asked him what made him so sure he had summoned a succubus, and he answered with, "A demon came into my room and said she would do things to me until I perished." I was seriously annoyed at that point. My friend was convinced that a demon woman told him something like that. I explained to him in my calmest voice that if he was indeed dealing with a succubus, she would be more forceful than that. He kept insisting it was true. I told him that he needed to do 3 things: take a hint, get a life, and let me go back to bed. He promised me a set of trading cards if I helped. He would not stop persisting unless I did something, so I eventually relented and took the offer. That agreement ended up being a mistake. The following night, I brought another female friend named Natalie with me. She didn't want to come with me, but I was able to convince her by promising that we would have something to deal with. She always wanted to see something paranormal, and I didn't want to go alone. Her mood was sour the entire time Alexander was telling us what happened. I asked him if we were supposed to sleep in his room while he slept on the couch. He shook his head and said he wouldn't be spending another second in his room or house, so he went to stay at a hotel. At this point, Natalie was extremely annoyed, and I was too. I told her that she could leave if she wanted, but she told me if I was being forced to stay in another person's house, she would stay to make sure I didn't break anything, even though I'm far from clumsy or stupid. At midnight, we were bored out of our minds. In fact, Natalie suggested we try to summon something like Alexander, but as a joke. I laughed and said, "Oh, Satan, send us the demons of desire." We both laughed and eventually went to sleep. I woke up a few hours later. The clock clearly was shining 4:13 on the wall.
Wow.
I looked up and screamed. First off, I know I was awake because I never dream about things like this, and I was able to scream quite audibly. There was a person on top of me.
What?
She had the face of a lovely young woman, but her body, it was wretched, wrinkled, and rotting beyond its years. I tried to tell her to get off of me, but she was so terrifying. Nothing came out that time when I opened my mouth. She began to scratch and claw at me, the pain releasing my voice at last, but it didn't work. I looked over to Natalie on my left and saw that she was swatting in the air like she was trying to fight off flies. She was screaming too, for someone to get off her body. In that moment, I had never felt so scared or helpless. I summoned every ounce of my strength in a desperate attempt to get the thing off of me. I closed my eyes and reared up quickly, and when I opened them, the being was gone. I ran over to Natalie and shook her. She seemed to calm down after a few moments, and we no longer saw what we were fighting. We left Alexander's house, not wanting to stay another second there. I later on admitted to Alexander what happened. He felt smug, telling us that he was right the whole time. I continued to think this only happened because I was dumb enough to challenge Satan myself that night. I basically had asked for the attack. To this day, Alexander hasn't called, texted, or emailed me. Natalie stopped talking to us as well, blaming me for inciting the attack that she had endured that night. And now Grace won't even respond to me.
Wow.
Even now, I still have incidents where I see and feel that figure crouched on top of me. I can feel the burning pain of her nails in my skin. Although next thing after that, I'll see that I'm in bed alone, and it ends just as soon as it starts. Am I still dealing with a succubus? I really have no idea. I really hope it's nothing more than a dream, because living my life in fear is a life I don't want to live. And finally, for the last story, is a classic story that I read from last year, I believe. A New Year's story titled, "Don't Go Camping on New Year's Eve," from user Zachary C. Charles. Whether you've heard this story before or not, I hope you enjoy it. It was 2016, but not for long. It was the day before New Year's Eve, and me and a friend of mine were hanging on the couch that night, talking about our plans to bring in the new year. We all know how much 2016 sucked, and I wanted to do something to take my mind off of everything. My friend, Terry, was going to go to a party, get some Molly, have a time he probably wasn't even going to remember. But I wasn't into that. No, I wanted to be away from other people this year. I thought having a clear head would just be more fun, more peaceful, especially after all the stress of 2016. So I decided last minute that tomorrow night I was going camping. No ball drop, no countdown, just a campfire and some crickets wishing me a great new year. That night I packed my hammock and a tarp, a couple of flashlights and a pack of batteries, beef jerky and some water. Everything I would need to make sure I wouldn't have to worry about surviving. I was definitely no survivor man. New Year's night, I left around 7:30. I traveled to the Panhandle National Forests of Idaho. If you haven't been in the woods of Idaho, it's evergreens as far as the eye can see, like an ocean of pine trees and nothing else. I would have recommended visiting the place, but not after what happened to me out there. I wouldn't wish it on my enemy. By 8 o'clock that night, I was in the middle of the woods, backpack and tarp in hand. The woods were quite normal that night, except for how warm it was for that time of year. Global warming, I guess. There were crickets chirping, the occasional owl hooting, and just my footsteps cracking the twigs underfoot. So, all in all, it was very peaceful. But I'm not gonna sit here and lie to your face about not being creeped out. Anytime I've ever stepped into the woods, daylight or nighttime or with friends, I've always felt a little bit of dread. I've always thought it was natural, you know? Stepping away from your comfort zone and lazy boy recliner and going into the wild. Turns out there might be a pretty good reason, or probably evolutionary reason, why your body is telling you the woods are scary. So I found a couple of trees close enough together that I could set up my hammock and my tarp above it. I started a quick little campfire with a small bottle of kerosene and some matches. Afterwards, I chewed on some beef jerky and I watched the stars. It was a gorgeous night. I found myself with my eyes closed, lying on my back, thinking, why don't I do this more often? I was making mental plans, setting dates and schedules of when I could come back out here. Soon enough, it was bedtime. I took my shoes off, got up, and started to kick the dirt onto the fire. I probably should have left my shoes on for that, because that was when I kicked a little too far and ended up stepping on one of the burning logs and scorching a centimeter patch of skin on my foot. Ow! Dang it, that hurt, I said out loud, as I usually would when I unexpectedly hurt myself, though it could have been worse. Before I could reach for my water bottle to cool off my burn, I heard something that made my eyelids peel wide open and the hair on the back of my neck stick straight up. Whoa, didn't that hurt? It was a deep and raspy voice. I couldn't tell what it had tried to say, but when you hear something like that in the middle of the woods, it tells you a couple of things. One, you're not alone. And two, whatever it was no animal. I paused for a long time, trying not to make a sound, to see if the noise came again. And it did. Maybe 3 minutes after I first heard it. Wow, Dane, that hurt. I winced this time. What? I said under my breath. Were they trying to copy what I just said? But any person could do that easily. This person or thing was having trouble repeating what I said. In that way, it didn't sound like a person. It sounded more like something that didn't know how to talk and was trying its best to repeat what it had heard. Then it came again, and when I heard it this time, I wanted to vomit. Ow! Dang it, that hurt. Because the way it said it this time, it mimicked my voice perfectly, like a freaking recording. I knew it was time to go. I decided to keep quiet, for all I knew, this thing didn't know where I was exactly, so I thought it'd be better to keep quiet. What I didn't know I was doing as I untied my hammock from the tree was whispering to myself. Come on, I whispered almost silently, trying to intimidate the hammock into untying faster. But impossibly, that voice erupted once more, now only a few feet behind me, almost close enough to feel the breath of it on my neck. Come on, it said. It mimicked the words I had said, but not my voice this time. Instead, it seemed to use its own, a voice so deep and guttural, it was almost impossible to tell it was speaking words at all. I froze for a moment, waiting for some cold hand or razor-sharp claw to land on my shoulder from behind me. But when I heard a solitary twig on the ground snap from only inches behind me, I jumped over my hammock and ran barefoot on the cold ground to my car. I knew exactly where it was. I didn't have to worry about getting lost out there. What I did have to worry about was that voice coming again and again from behind me like a nightmarish echo. Soon I was in my SUV, racing away from the forest, not caring for the things that I'd left behind. I didn't see anything, and I didn't hear anything else once the door was shut. I didn't go back. Well, not until 2 weeks later. You see, that same night I realized I'd forgotten my wallet in the middle of the woods. It took me 2 full weeks from then to gather enough courage to actually go back. I made sure to arrive in the daytime, and by noon that same day, I'd found the spot exactly how I had left it. Hammock partially untied on the trees, tarp strewn above it, ashes where my campfire had been, and my wallet in the sole of one of my shoes, which were still at the base of one of the trees. I quickly packed away everything, and I power-walked back to my car. The whole time, my eyes were darting all over the place, to the left and to the right, ahead and behind me, fully expecting to see something from my worst nightmares, or at least hear something terrifying, something akin to that night. But I didn't. Though the walk out of the woods was stressful and anxious, I made it out alive, without so much as a hassle. And as I emerged from the tree line, I thanked my lucky stars. It was over. I could move on with my life, with this experience being something that only sat at the back of my mind, not at the forefront of my dreams. I thought to myself, as soon as I get back in town, I'm going to stop for a coffee and a slice of cheesecake, take my mind off of this whole creepy thing. Then I wouldn't ever have to come back to the woods. I walked around my SUV to the trunk, and I began to place everything in there, the goosebumps on my skin finally beginning to go down. But suddenly, my ears twitched, the way they do when you hear something familiar, the way they do when they hear your name being called. Because from the tree line, 10 or so yards away, I heard my voice calling my own name. Zachary. Zachary. I swallowed so hard, it hurt my throat. I slammed the trunk of my SUV shut, rattling the entire vehicle, and I jumped into the driver's seat, once again peeling away from those woods. This time, I didn't look back, because this time I knew if I glanced into the rearview mirror, if I looked back to the trees, I knew I'd see something standing there. I knew it would be something that I would never get over. If you're ever in the woods of Idaho, be wary of staying the night, especially on New Year's Eve. Because something in that national forest can copy your voice. It can pretend to be you. And something tells me that it's always watching. That's why I'm never going back to those woods. I'm gonna cut this outro quick so we can all get back to our family for the holidays.
Wowie. What do you think about the last story? The last story gave me the chills and the creeps, and my eyes are watery because I was so scared. Wow. I hope you guys have a wonderful New Year's, and 2020 is here. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'm going to be bringing out with the nice, awesome, fun videos back to back this year, and it's going to be fun. Just comment down below what other videos I should react to, and make sure you like, subscribe, and share all that awesome stuff. And I hope you guys have a wonderful night, and good night, and stay strong, and God bless. Love you guys. Bye.